I'm King Link, and it's September 2021, which means it's time for the Humble Choice September 2021 review. Funny how that works out. We have 13 games this month, and as always, I play each game for an hour, and now I'm here to tell you all about them. Let's just get started. PGA Tour 2K21. I think a lot of people are expecting me to tear into this game, but that's not really what I do. PGA Tour 2K21 is a golf game, and honestly, that could be my entire review. It perfectly bookends every point I would make about this game. Everything I don't like about PGA Tour 2K21 can be followed up with, but it's a golf game. It's slow and boring, it doesn't really have any interesting modes, it's focused on golf, but of course, it's a golf game. And every positive thing I could say is equally followed up with, but it's a golf game. The controls are decent, it has excellent difficulty settings, it's peaceful and relaxing, but it's a golf game. The only real issue I have with PGA Tour 2K21 is the privacy statement and microtransactions that are just thrown at the player as a 1-2 punch at the soul. And while it's only cosmetic microtransactions, that's really not good enough when you only have a couple of choices without paying money. You can of course earn the money in-game, but not at a huge rate, and again, if that was the expected way, why not just remove the microtransactions because you don't need them? Pick this up if you want a golf game. Honestly, if you like golf, it felt rather good. I turned down the difficulty and had what could be called fun with it. And while I got super frustrated with the game, it was my failing at that point and not any issue with the game itself. That sounds great, but it's a golf game. And if you want me to tear into this, we'll save that for the conclusion where I can discuss if this game should have been a headliner. Spoiler, no. Neon Abyss, our first roguelite of the bundle. Players are thrown into the abyss and have to fight their way out. The game just oozes style and feels like a Binding of Isaac design philosophy with a little Dead Cells platforming and a deep weapon system as well. But every weapon is a gun. The levels, bosses, and gameplay are fantastic, and working your way through the levels and boss encounters are excellent. There's a big piece of the game in the items that you're going to get and the synergies between them. There's actually a decent amount of luck involved with the game as well, as my 2 deep runs had amazing item lists and tons of drops, and I struggled for about 30 minutes across 4 runs between them to get beyond the 2nd level, possibly due to some bad luck, or possibly grinding permanent upgrades over time. Neon Abyss feels polished and well designed, even if a decent amount of that is just the Binding of Isaac rule set snuck in there. I have seen it's not the longest roguelite, and with a heavy reliance on luck, that might upset some roguelite players. There are also 3 difficulty modes, so new players can choose the one that's right for them. Pick this up if you somehow aren't overloaded with roguelites already. I have over 100 roguelites myself, but I still think I can find a place to play this. It's solid, but I also then question, do I need yet another roguelite? Not for broadcast. This game takes a simple idea of the player being in charge of a news program and then has them running the broadcast booth themselves. It's a strange idea for a game, but with excellent acted FMVs it works well. Everything is based on a typical news broadcast. You have an anchorman, interview segments, and even press conferences that you'll cover. You have to keep the stream lively, but also focus on who's going to be talking and giving reaction shots to what they're saying. You also will have to bleep out swears and a bunch of different functions that will come up to keep players focused on the game rather than watching videos. But what's great is that the players will be able to look at their finished broadcasts after they've created, so they can catch much of what's being said, and it's the actual footage that the player is putting together. You know, it's a simple but obvious thing that many FMV games forget about. Pick this up if you like FMV games and want to see something a little different than everything else. I don't know if chasing a perfect broadcast is going to be worth it, but I did enjoy my first experience here, and this is early access, which normally will put me off, but the team has proven they can deliver quality experiences, and all that remains is 3 final broadcasts out of the entire 9 that they've promised. I think that's a gamble that already has paid off. Röki. This is a point-and-click adventure game focused on Scandinavian folklore. Well, kind of. It has the same mechanics as a point-and-click adventure game, but it's also designed for controllers, so players with keyboard and mouse will feel off in some way. It's still a classic point-and-click adventure game though, with a different control scheme. Röki focuses on Scandinavian folklore, with Jotuns being mentioned pretty early in the story. The opening focuses on siblings Tove and Lars. As you'll see on the screen, a mythical giant beast is attacking the family home, and suddenly it's up to Tove, the sister, to try to get away with her little brother, Lars, though ultimately Lars gets captured. I particularly love that it's the Scandinavian folklore, which still has a mythos that feels fresh. One strange thing is that the family just acts like being attacked by a massive creature the size of a house is a normal occurrence. This giant beast is just attacking everyone, and people just seem accepting the fate. This is just how life is out here. Anyways, pick this up if you like point-and-click adventure games such as those from LucasArts long ago, or want a great story about something that you probably haven't seen a million times already. There's not a lot of action in this game, and the puzzles are a bit easy in the first hour, but I want to see where this game's going to go, and it lasts over 10 hours, so that's actually pretty impressive. Narita Boy. This is a game that's trying to base itself on an 80s game, and it's really obvious from this video that Narita Boy has a ton of style in its art. It's just kind of a shame that the gameplay and the experience is kind of underwhelming compared to it. The story is about a player sucked into a game and then fights to save it from its creator and an evil force named the Stallions. As I played, I couldn't help but think about how many missed opportunities there were in the story. One character is named the Motherboard, which works really well, but there's not that many other references to computer hardware and software. Even when the game tries, it just makes up words like the trichoma instead of giving players something more recognizable like RGB. I kept thinking about how Tron did this idea so much better even in a movie over 30 or 40 years ago. The gameplay is also lacking. While the combat is acceptable, there's a lot of walking and a ton of backtracking. Directions where you're supposed to go aren't always clear, but even then the battles are mostly easy to dodge attacks and then punishing enemies when they whiff. Nothing that deep. The platforming is merely okay, there's just nothing beyond that art that I clicked with. So pick this up if you love the art style here. This is what it looks like, but the gameplay is pretty rough for what it is. What a shame though, because I love the concept here. Traveling into a computer could have been a rich experience, but this is one I just couldn't enjoy. West of Dead. When I think of West of Dead, I think of a cowboy crossed with Ghost Rider. Players take on a dead soul trying to escape from purgatory, and ignoring the rather obvious link to Hades, it's a good concept. West of Dead's gameplay is focused on lighting. If enemies are in the shadows, players can't damage them. If players ignite torches, it actually blinds the enemies momentarily, but enemies will be shooting at the player as much as I can, causing the players to have to dodge out and ignite the lights to illuminate areas. There's also a very strong cover-based system and a rather solid weapon selection here. I found a lot of the game made me hopeful for the rest of the title. But I also have seen some not so flattering opinions. It sounds like this is a love it or hate it game, and it may be a little light on content, which could be a problem. However, for the hour I played, I started enjoying myself and had a pretty fun time, but I also wouldn't put it high on my growing list of roguelites. It's good, not great. Pick this up if you like Cowboys, the Wild West, or roguelites and need a new one. Also, the main character is voiced by Ron Perlman, so his fans will definitely want to check it out. The cover-based shooting was rather strong here, and I already found a couple weapons that felt very powerful, so it might be worth picking up just for those. Atomicrops. Another roguelite. I'm going to start this section with a warning. This is going to look a lot like a cutesy Stardew Valley, but it's not. This is a pure roguelite that has players running around a large location in the day collecting seeds and supplies, then returning to protect their farm at night from enemy invaders. Atomicrops has a solid gameplay loop. The farming is fast-paced and complicated, and the enemy horde will keep the player fighting the entire time. This is a bullet hell shooter tied to a simplified farming system. The first hour I played this on Xbox Game Pass, I wasn't really sold on it, but it grew on me quite a bit over the few hours I've played it now, and I really enjoyed the experience now. It's just so overwhelming at times. The combat, though, is going to be the make it or break it point. Players are going to be flooded by enemy attacks, and they're going to have to dodge all the bullets as best as they can. Healing is a rarity here, and players will be expected to last a very long time against absolutely aggressive enemies. Still, it is rewarding, and every day you survive feels like a major accomplishment. Pick this up if you like roguelites. I feel like I've said that a few times already, though this is more Enter the Gungeon than anything. The farming mechanic is almost a gimmick, as it's a way for you to earn money and restore life, but a majority of the game will be focused on gathering seeds away from home. Staying home for a day is seldom a wise option. Heaven's Vault. This is a dialogue-heavy game about space travelers exploring the galaxy and trying to find out what happened to other expeditions. At least I think that's it. If it sounds like I'm not sure, it's because while the game talks about flying to far-off moons and into outer space, you also just ride the wind to travel between all these locations. It's very strange. Heaven's Vault feels like a robust storybook that keeps pushing the player to interact with its world and story and experience it as they want. Heaven's Vault does a great job keeping the dialogue flowing and prompting the player for input. There's also an interesting mechanism that allows the player to learn an ancient language, with the player having to eliminate possibilities and guess at what each object might be used for. There's apparently over 1,000 words in that language. Heaven's Vault also claims it's a non-linear story, so players might be able to explore the world and learn the language at their own pace, without being forced to go through the same path every other player is forced down. That's of course a very big promise, but I am curious how well that will work. Pick this up if you like narratives over gameplay systems or are interested in linguistics. There's not a lot of gameplay here, but the language learning system feels robust and fresh. Most of the game is just talking to your robot or random people that you find in random locations. That appears to be the extent of the gameplay. Swag in Sorcery. This is a game I really should love. It's an incremental game where players collect loot and try to survive. The gameplay is mostly around resource management. You'll tell a hero to go somewhere and they should work for you. You can also send them on adventures, but you can't control the combat directly, so it's up to them to win. Going through the quest is a tutorial to teach you how to play the game, and it's a solid start until you hit the wall about 15 minutes in. Suddenly the game starts summoning elite units without really preparing you for it. Elites are much harder versions of regular enemies, but what's worse is they start appearing on every run due to that active quest. If you can't beat them, you have to start grinding, but entering a level and leaving when you see an elite really just isn't fun. I played this for an hour. I tried on 3 separate files, 3 completely different tactics, and I barely made progress. Worse, there's no easier zone or option. You're going to be struggling against the elites or quit when they come around. There's no way to make money to get stronger without a lot of grinding, and even farming for resources is annoying at best once those elites are introduced. Pick this up if you want a frustrating incremental or want almost a mobile game. But again, I'm a huge fan of the incremental genre, and I really just hate this one. Instead, pick up Cookie Clicker. It just came out on Steam for $5. Yes, that Cookie Clicker, that developer deserves your purchase. You can also check out free incrementals such as Idling to Rule the Gods, Wizards and Minions Idle, Realm Grinder, or Clicker Heroes, and probably enjoy yourself more than this. I just really can't recommend Swag and Sorcery at all. Fort Triumph. This is a fantasy version of XCOM tied to Heroes of Might and Magic game. When you're taking on both of those games and genres at one time, Fort Triumph actually feels rather fresh. The combat system has the usual attack, special attacks, and Overwatch for ranged characters that fans of XCOM are going to be familiar with, but it also adds in many physics-based solutions for the player to experiment with. If an enemy is hiding behind a tree or stone, players can topple the tree or kick the stone into the enemy. There are also chain reactions that can happen as well. The rest of the gameplay uses an overworld map like Heroes of Might and Magic, with a focus on scooting around and accomplishing quests to progress the story of each scenario. There's about 4 scenarios, I believe. I didn't get very far with the story, but it reminded me of all the best parts of Heroes of Might and Magic's exploration, though without summoning your troops at each town. Pick this up if you like XCOM's tactical system or are fond of the old Heroes of Might and Magic games. It's a good blend between those two. The story is a bit weak though, and if you don't like XCOM, it's going to be very hard to get into this game, as that is the majority of the gameplay experience. Orwell, Ignorance is Strength. This is a strange game. You play as an employee of a government intelligence agency for the nation and have to provide intel to a supervisor while surfing the web. That supervisor will make important logistical decisions based on what you tell her. It sounds like a straightforward game, but Orwell Ignorance's strength is surprisingly deep. Players will have to decide which intel is important to their agency, and also which intel they should be ignoring or even hiding. Each of these choices becomes a branching system that creates multiple different resolutions to each of the 3 episodes. The branching pathway actually can change the stories for almost every character in the game, and that's where it really shines. Orwell Ignorance's strength is strongest not because it's talking about government surveillance, but also questions what information governments should have access to, what decisions governments can make with incomplete or incorrect information, and more. It's not just a game that takes a singular stance though, but rather one that puts the player into that position where his decisions are going to matter, and then challenge them to make better decisions. Pick this up if you like strange games. A majority of this game is just clicking through fake websites and deciding which information is important. The story at the core here is very compelling, and the questions at the heart of Orwell will stick with you long after the game is over. At the same time, I highly recommend new players start with the first game, Orwell keeping an eye on you if they have it. It's just a slightly stronger experience. Ignorance's Strength is a good follow-up, but, a little weaker. The Framed Collection. I really enjoyed this game, but there are a few caveats with it. The Framed Collection has a really interesting concept where players move panels of a comic around to help the hero survive and follow a pretty good adventure. The biggest issue though is there's not a lot of interactivity with it. While every level is an interesting puzzle, most of them can be solved in a couple of seconds, and only a few of them are really challenging. There's also not many puzzles here. I got every achievement in the game in under 3 hours, and I didn't need a guide for anything before the achievements themselves. This is a pretty easy puzzle game. Still, it's rather good looking and I enjoyed the experience, but similar to Book of Kai, this is going to be a game you play through once quickly and then move on. The concept here is really good, but there is no longevity. Both of these titles were originally mobile games, and it's a bit obvious due to the lack of depth. Pick this up if you're going to grab something else in the bundle. It's a great pack-in title, but it's not something I would recommend itself. It usually goes for about $10 on Steam, and I think I'd actually recommend picking up for under $5 due to its length. And that's the 12 Humble Choice games, and wait, oh god, what is this? It's the bonus game. Sluggish, Morss, Pattern Circus. Seriously, I really need someone to tell me what this game even is. It feels broken, it feels awful, it feels terrible, but let me try to be nice about it. Sometimes the music is good, just sometimes. I really don't even understand why this game is in the bundle, even as an original. It feels like my neurochemistry needs to be modified to even accept this. I think there should be something at the beginning to tell me what drugs I should be using here and when to use them, because there's clearly a disconnect. The other option is something was broken on my machine, which could be the case, I guess, but there's a similar look to previous titles, and it looks like this is just the style chosen for the game. This game actually was kickstarted, but it only earned about £9,000, and I really hope those people got what they wanted, but I have no clue what it is they even wanted after playing. Don't pick this up. I mean, it's a free add-on to the bundle that I literally say don't download. If you like what you're seeing, let me know why in the comments, because I'm staggered that this is in the bundle. This was absolute frustration experience for 40 minutes. I'm going to change the videos because, well, I just don't want to see that game anymore. Golf. Golf is better than that. Did I just say that? Well, since we're watching it, let's discuss the headliner, and yeah, PGA Tour 2K21 is the headliner. I dislike this fact. I get the game. I don't think it's a problem. If you like realistic golf, this might be one of the best golf games and bundles for it. But it's a headliner for a bundle, and dear God, it's a really bad choice. I'm not even going to complain about the microtransactions anymore, but they suck. Okay, that's the last of it. Golf is a niche sport. Now this is like having a NASCAR game as a headliner or a Assetto Corsa. There's going to be people who enjoy those games, but the headliner should have a mass appeal for most of the audience. PGA Tour 2K21 probably appeals to less than 10% of potential Humble Choice buyers. It's the wrong game to start us off with. Also, maybe it's too late to draw this line in the sand. I'm kind of getting sick of how many roguelites there are in all these Humble Choice bundles. There's 3 this month, and that's actually on the low side for Humble, but as I was playing them this month, I realized I really don't need more roguelites. I barely have the time to play the ones I already have. I also want to mention that a lot of these games are rebundles. Framed, Heaven's Vault, Orwell, and Swag and Sorcery have all been given away by different services, including Framed and Heaven's Vault being bundled by Humble themselves. Narita Boy, Neon Abyss, Atomicrops are currently available on Xbox Game Pass. West of Dead was available for the last year, and I know Xbox Game Pass and Humble are completely different offerings, but these games are pretty well tread at this point. I normally just talk about the strongest and the weakest of the month and try to avoid making general suggestions on the overall bundle, but I do have to call out that I really do feel that this is the weakest Humble Choice has ever been. I normally roll my eyes when I see people saying they're immediately going to be passing before they hear anything about the games, but this list is far below where this could have been, and I see the problem this month. I think everyone does. The fact is, I'm glad to make this video, but I feel like I'm playing these games so other people might not have to. If that's the case, I'm glad to spend my time on it, but I tell you what, this was a rough month. Anyways, let's talk about the weakest and strongest. The third weakest this month is Narita Boy. This just didn't really speak to me, and I know there's going to be a huge audience for this one, but I didn't enjoy this game as much as the others. Maybe I expected too much when a game talked about going into a computer or into code, but Narita Boy didn't really have the best controls or balance between combat either. The second weakest this month is PGA Golf 2K21. I really don't think this game is that bad, obviously, from what I've said before. I just can't recommend it to anyone but a fan of, realistic golf. If that's you, buy this bundle at any price. It's $60 title for absolutely cheap, no matter what tier you get it at. But almost everyone else will probably just be skipping playing this game. And the weakest game this month is Swag and Sorcery. I love incremental games. I probably spend too much time on them, but Swag and Sorcery was one of the worst I've ever played. I got stuck 3 times after about 15 minutes of play on each save file. Now I could of course grind, but it was such a horribly designed system to grind, requiring too much micromanagement, and the clear path to progression being tedious. And that's from someone who loves idle games, which are repetitive and tedious almost all the time. So with that being said, let's switch to the strongest. The 5th strongest this month is Fort Triumph. XCOM and Heroes of Might and Magic in one package is a strategy fan's wet dream. Even if you like XCOM, you'll find a great game here, but I love someone's making a great Heroes of Might and Magic game again. The 4th strongest this month is Atomicrops. As I said, the first hour I played on Atomicrops was rough, but something clicked and then I fell for this game. It's a weird mixture of a roguelite, bullet hell shooter, and a tower defense game, which works well as a concept after you get to how strange that concept is. The 3rd strongest this month is Röki. I like the concept and story at the heart of this game, but I also really appreciate seeing a game that looks at fresh folklore and doesn't feel like it's the same tale everyone has repeated ad nauseum. Also, it's a good point-and-click and puzzle game. The 2nd strongest this month is Not for Broadcast. This is a unique and strange concept, and the FMV genre needs more games. I love FMV games if the production values are like these. There's, a little silliness in here as well, but also a game that will keep the player's attention due to just how much is thrown at the player. Now, the only issue I have is it is a bit short, but I'm hoping the final 1.0 update extends the game just a bit more. And the strongest this month is Neon Abyss. I'm kind of torn on this game. I've heard it's not the longest, but it also seems like the most fun I had this month. The concept is taken from other places, but perfectly executed on, and it feels like there's a lot of variety here. It's still the best title on this list this month, and that's absolutely why it's at the top. If you reached this point, thank you very much for watching this month. It was a little harder for me to get through all these titles, but if it helps you make up your mind, it was all worth it. If this was helpful in any ways, give me a thumbs up, throw me a comment my way to help me out or help the channel out, and tell me what you think about the bundle or the video itself. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing and ringing that bell to see when I come out with a new video. With that said, I did mention pausing this month, so if you do that and you have a couple extra bucks, you may want to check out the Xbox Game Pass. I actually do a similar video to this on the Xbox Game Pass games. I have my August 2021 video on the screen. Even if you aren't interested in the Game Pass itself, the format has me going over a bunch of recent releases and the games you might want to check out with that extra cash. So check out that video and help out your favorite content creator. Whoa, before you go, I meant me! Oh well. Until then, I'm King Link, and thanks for watching.